Hello and welcome to the second CTIS walk-in clinic. My name is Roxana Spulver and I'm the Change Management Officer at EMA. Let me start with some housekeeping rules. We will be using Slido to collect questions. Here is how to use Slido. Go to slido.com and enter the code on the screen, Clinic 2, or scan the QR code on the screen. The code and the QR code will be visible on all the presented slides for ease of access. You can ask your questions there and give a thumbs up to any question you want to see answered. We'll answer the most popular questions first, so please ensure to use the thumbs up feature. Please keep the question focused on CTIS functionalities. If the video screen is blurry or difficult to see, please read the instructions in the gray box underneath the video on the event page. There you can find a link to watch the live broadcast in full screen. In full screen mode, you can increase the video quality by clicking the HD button on the bottom right of the screen and choosing 720p or 1080p setting. I will now present some pieces of useful information related to CTIS before introducing the CTI experts that will be present today. Over 20 mono, national, and multi-member states clinical trial applications have been submitted for assessment in CTIS. The majority of the applications were submitted by academic sponsors, while a significant number are also submitted by pharmaceutical companies. The European Commission provides templates for Part 2 clinical trial application documents, including the investigator CV, site suitability form, and informed consent document. Sponsors can use these templates to draft their documents. They have been endorsed by the EU Clinical Trial Expert Group to facilitate efficient and streamlined assessment by the member states. The document templates can be found in Chapter 1 of EudraLex Volume 10. For more information on CTIS, you can consult various resources. Some of them are listed on this slide. The clinical trial highlights that provides key updates on the development of CTIS and also includes topics such as Business Change Program, Act EU. The CTIS newsflash that contains short updates on system usage, key facts and figures, hints to help users with specific features and links to reference materials. You can also check our training and support page. And for more guidance on CTR interpretation and national guidance for national processes and best practices, you can check the EudraLex Volume 10 Clinical Trial Guidelines. And I would now like to introduce to you our experts. And today we have Noémie Manon, Principal Scientific Administrator and leader of the Operation Workstream for the Clinical Trial Information System, enabling the application of the Clinical Trial Regulation. And Laura Pioppo, Scientific Administrator. Laura has been working on the development of the Clinical Trial Information System since 2017 by defining and testing the system functionalities in collaboration with the member states and sponsor product owners and the European Commission. I am now handing it over to our experts.
Hello, hi, good afternoon. So this is Noémie Manin from the European Medicines Agency. So as you can see, we've got a few colleagues currently at the office, and so we will take any questions that will come to the Slido, and we look forward to have a very productive session.
Thank you very much and good afternoon. My name is Laura Pioppo and I will now, together with Noémie, reply to the questions that have been posed on Slido. I think we can maybe start. There was a question Okay, they're coming through on the delegation of the roles. Maybe starting from the first question. Is there a possibility to check who has been delegated what role for a sponsor on sponsor level and not on the trial level? So the visibility on the assignment of the roles and the permission is basically available for the city admin as well as for the sponsor admin within an organization. And by accessing the user management tab, both admin roles have a visibility of the roles that have been assigned to the users working for that sponsor, regardless if these employees are working in the sponsor or they're working for a CRO. As long as they've been given a role by the sponsor admin or the city admin, this will be visible from the user tab. And in this way, the administrators have an overview of the assignation of the delegated task. I think this addressed the first question. Thank you, Roxana. Maybe we can flag it as complete. And my colleague Noemi will take the next question. Thank you.
Many thanks, Laura. So the next question that we see on the screen is, could you explain, is it not possible to download the ASR submission, the ASR assessment? For archival purposes, screenshot must be taken. Will a download option be made available in the future? So in order to look at this, so this is for the annual safety report that the sponsor will have the obligation to submit on an annual basis. So for the ASR submission, obviously, the sponsor is responsible to compile this ASR submission. So when they've actually done it, it is correct that they cannot actually download the package that they've submitted. But when we look at the package submitted, it's basically one document that they need to provide. So I think for archival purposes, they can certainly record whatever was submitted to CTIS. So that would be one way to record what information is submitted to member states. And for the ASR assessment, so once the annual safety report is submitted to the member states, then there is a way to for the member state to assess the information and to then provide what we call an annual safety report in the CTIS. So this annual safety reports can be downloaded. There is a functionality to download it on its own. So it is correct to say that the full information is not downloaded as well as the structured data. I think this is probably why the question is being asked. So it's correct that today there is no, let's say, overall download functionality. This is something that has been actually considered. This is something that we will certainly look at in the future for improvement. But so how to actually record the information in your, and I believe this is probably for the trial master file, I think the way to do it is to certainly, at least you've got the ability to download the ASR, on the annual safety report assessment report that will be provided to you by the member states. So you would have the ability to have this. Now, a screenshot, maybe this is the way you would want to collect the information. But I guess this really depends on the processes you would want to use. So that should answer this question that we see on the screen. Thank you. So I'll pass on to Laura. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you very much, Noemi. There was a question that I've seen before about the third parties. Yes, is it mandatory to indicate all the third parties to which the sponsor has delegated clinical trials related responsibilities, or the main CRO is enough? So this is correct that in the part 1 of the clinical trial application form, under the sponsor section, the sponsor can specify if there are third parties, CROs or lab or other parties to which activities have been delegated. And you can complete this section is structured data that can be populated. Now, depending on the amount of third parties, it's true that further information can be provided also in the document uploaded in CTIS. So maybe would be good also to verify with the national competent authority, with the member states, if they're really expecting to have all the details in the structured data in CTIS, or maybe only the main CRO would be considered enough, and then refer to the documentation for a more detailed listing. So both options, let's say, are acceptable, but maybe would be good to clarify with the national competent authorities to understand their expectation in terms of completion of the structured data. Thank you very much.
So the next question we see on the screen is the one that is highlighted, and it says, could you explain the different uses for document upload in the RFI section? So e.g. uploading under supporting information versus uploading under the consideration. I think that's a very good question, because obviously within the functionality you have different options, and those different options, I must say, evolve when we were actually developing the functionality, because I think the product owners view that apologies, would want to have further flexibility within the system to enable support to the sponsors. So today, what we see, and under the supportive documentation, and this one I would say is a generic, is a more overall document that is that the sponsor can provide when they answer an RFI. So this is probably, when it was actually developed, it was probably thought that it would be something similar to a cover note to explain what is provided by the sponsor. So that's maybe the way to look at it. And now within each consideration, so within each question, the member states, when they have a consideration that they've raised, the sponsor would need to respond each and every consideration. And within those, there is a text field that needs to be responded to, for sure, but also the sponsor has the ability to upload a document. So this document there is, and the way to look at it is probably to think that it's very much to further expand on the response that is provided. So here, what is not, this functionality is really not to provide a new protocol version or a new investigator's brochure version. This is not the purpose of this particular placeholder. Here, it's very much to support the response of that to that particular consideration. As we know, the text field structure is limited to, I think, 4,000 characters. Now, you may want and you may wish to supplement this response, and this is the purpose of what it is here. So I hope that answered the question.
Thank you very much, Noemi. Maybe we can move to the next one, that is about deferrals. How will it show in CTIS if the requested deferrals is granted, and which deferral the member states has indicated for the questions and the assessment report? This is a very good question in relation to the use of the deferrals, and is just to remind that, as we know in CTIS, there are two functionalities. One is for the sponsor to request a deferral when completing the form section in the clinical trial application form, and suggest or request to have a delay in the publication of certain data and documents depending on the trial category. And if the sponsor has requested a deferral, then only in that case also the member states can also require the delay in the publication of their assessment reports and the RFI, the request for information. So there is no a dedicated field, let's say, in CTIS where the sponsor can see deferral granted, ticked, assigned by the member states for the proposed timelines. Let's say that the member states have the possibility, if they have comments or question or concern on the request for the deferrals and the timelines, they can always raise an RFI. They can raise a request for information and come back to the sponsor with comments on the deferrals. And as part of this exchange with the RFI, the sponsors can be informed if the timelines have been agreed and the deferral can take place. The member states, when they will issue the decision, they can also agree if they want to have a deferral, as I was saying. And This is applicable for the assessment report and the RFI. How the sponsor will know? This is visible from the evaluation section, basically going into the CTA, in the clinical trial application section, there is a table for evaluation. And from there, it will be possible, at the very bottom, there is a table, assessment overview. And from there, you can see the deferral granted for the sponsor and the corresponding deferral, if there is any, for the member states. So to answer your question, this will be visible from the evaluation part, the assessment overview. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. So the next question we see on the screen here is with the question on substantial modification and particular documents. So I'll just read the question. When submitting, for example, a substantial modification, is there a way to change the title of a document, or will it take the same title as was indicated in the initial clinical trial application? So it is correct that today the way the system is set up is that you have a placeholder. Within this placeholder, the sponsor can upload a document, and when there are incremental changes done within a substantial modification, the sponsor can actually, let's say, upload a new version of a previous document and select the functionality that would enable to do that as a version 2 or version 3 in the system, using the system functionality. So by doing that, this means that the sponsor would then increment the versioning and then submit an updated document to the one that had already been submitted. In such a case, obviously, when the sponsor is uploading the document, then this document comes on top of the one that was previously submitted, and it is expressed as version n+1. Okay. Now, can they change the title? There is a way to change the title. Yes, there is a pencil. Once the document is actually uploaded, the sponsor can use the functionality of the pencil and then update the document title. So if they do so, then it will reflect it within the CTA, and it will appear as such with a new title of the document. Okay, so thank you.
The next question is in relation to the serious breaches. So with regard to serious breaches notification, will it also be possible to select ex-EU, so non-EU sites, in case the serious breach occur at a site outside of the European Union? And the answer is yes. When the sponsor notifies a serious breach for a trial that has been authorized in CTIS, it's possible for the sponsor to look up for the trials, for the sites where the serious breach occurred, and the details on the sites are taken from OMS, from the Organization Management Service, the database that we are managing at the agency. So in case the serious breach occurred outside of the EU, and for any reason this has an impact on the trial ongoing in the European Union, then is possible to search in OMS and find the site and report the serious breach accordingly.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura. Quite a flexible system, clearly. Yeah? So on this next question that we see on the screen, it is about the download functionality. Are any updates to the download functionality plan to allow, for example, to only download the information updated or submitted as part of the RFI? So clearly here there is a wish, I guess, from the requester to have a more granular way to download the information. Today, the download can be done per clinical trial application. It's true. When the download is done, it is done from all the documents that are currently available at the time are then being able to be downloaded as such. Currently, it's true that we don't have the leisure to only download, let's say, documents that were updated through an RFI. It's correct. It's not available. Now, do we have a plan to update this functionality with more, let's say, more technical functionality to enable various ways to download? I think this is, we do have, I think, from what I remember, we have some improvement plan with the download. Now, I don't think we have this particular request on the ability to download only the document updated through an RFI. So all I can say, if in the future we feel that this is really required, I would say that we would need to have such a request in our system. So this would come through all the various queries that sponsors would express, and then we would certainly take that into consideration in order to plan further improvement on the system. So now, how would you like to take the next one, please? Thank you.
Yes, sure. And the next one is again on serious breaches, which is nicely then linked with the previous one, because they seem to be also related in terms of where to take the information from. So reading the question, in case a serious breach occurred not at the trial site, but for example at the vendor, how should this be notified, as it will not be possible to select a site? So this is not entirely true that it will not be possible to select a site, because basically in CTIS, the first screen that you see is a list of the sites, including third parties, if there are vendors that are associated with that trial. So the system will offer you the list of sites that recognized are associated to that trial, including also details on CRO and vendor if they're part of the CTA. But should these details not be recorded in the clinical trial application form, as I was explaining before, the sponsor has also the possibility to search in OMS. So if the details of the vendor, in this case where the serious breach occurred, are in OMS, then the sponsor can search and select and identify the details of the site where the breach occurred, and submit the application. So the system does not restrict the possibility to select site, only clinical investigator sites for notification of serious breaches. Any details of organizations, vendors that are associated to the CTA can be selected, or any details of organizations that are in OMS can be selected for this purpose. So I hope this clarifies. It's really in line with the previous answer on serious breaches, also for sites outside of the European Union.
Okay, no, thank you, Laura. The next question is about a non-substantial protocol amendment, I guess. The question as it reads is there any insight on when we will have possibly example in CTIS on non-substantial protocol amendment? I think probably to have an understanding of what examples constitute a non-substantial protocol amendment, we can certainly refer to the Q&A that is available on the volume 10 of the Commission website, where there are some further explanation on non-substantial amendments. So I think this is probably the way to respond to this question. And please refer to the Q&A, where you can have more insight into what constitutes a non-substantial protocol amendment. Okay. Now, how would you like to take the next one, please? Thank you.
Yes, sure. The next one is about document weight and document size, and this we know is one of the things that will be improved in future releases of the system, because at the moment, as you know, we have a limitation of 10 megabytes for the document to be uploaded. So the question is, if the ASR exceeds the 10 megabyte, should we split the ASR and upload in pieces in other document section? How to handle ASR submission if both the ASR and the IB exceed 50 megabyte size? So yes, just to address this, the current implementation is with this limit on the weight of the document, and would be then necessary to split basically the PDF, the document in different parts in order to have the upload, because each individual document uploaded cannot be heavier than 10 megabytes, at least with the current implementation. But this is something noted for future improvement. I don't think we can say much more at this stage on this. Thank you.
So the next question is about a functionality that is called disagreement in a system. So I'll just read the question. Under the evaluation, there is an indicated section, intended disagreement. Could you clarify what this is to be used for? So this particular section was suggested by our product owners at the time. This is particularly located in the Part 1 section. So in the Part 1 section, the reporting member state is responsible for preparing the conclusion to the assessment to Part 1. And during the course of their assessment, they will have gathered consideration from all the member states, and they will basically proceed to the joint assessment of the Part 1. Further to this joint assessment, the responsible member state, or the reporting member state, will then issue the conclusion to the Part 1. When this conclusion is submitted, the member states concerned have the ability to issue what we call in the system an intended disagreement to Part 1. This is just a way to inform potentially the sponsor that a particular member state is probably willing to disagree with the assessment of the Part 1. However, the actual disagreement can only occur at the time of the decision. So this is why there will be two, in the system we can see, first of all, the intended disagreement of a member state concerned in the Part 1. And when this member state concerned definitely wish to express a disagreement to the Part 1, then they will have the ability to actually do that at the time of the decision to this application. And as we know, the decision to an application can only take place after the Part 2 assessment has also been assessed. So this is why currently in the system, in the evaluation section, in the Part 1, we have this section called intended disagreement. So I hope that clarifies. Thank you.
Okay, there was a question important on the sponsor details, how we correct sponsor details after creating the initial CTA. So that's very important because with the current functionality, basically when you create a new clinical trial application, the first thing that is done by the user is to provide the title of the trial and to search for the organization that will be the sponsor. And once that this is done, the information remains. So if you, for whatever reason, will have to update or modify the sponsor detail while your application is in draft, you cannot correct this from the same application. The only way forward would be to cancel your initial CTA that you have just created, and then proceed with a new initial CTA creation, selecting from OMS the details of the sponsors of the organization that will be the sponsor of the trial. So that would be the only way. Once the CTA is created and the number is generated, you cannot modify in the Part 1 the sponsor details. So you will have to cancel. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. So the next question is about, and I'll just read the question. As mentioned in paragraph M of the Annex 1 of the regulation, it says the planned number of subjects at the sites should be submitted. There is no place to do so in CTIS. I heard some countries are requesting this. Could you please tell us what to do? So as required in the regulation, certainly the number of subjects is to be, planned subject to be recruited is to be collected. Currently, it is collected on a member state level. It is not required to do it per site, and it's quite difficult actually to do it per site. So currently in CTIS, you are asked to provide it per member state, and there is a way to do this within the member state section of the dossier. And therefore, this is the way to provide the anticipated number of subjects to be recruited, basically. And that, in a way, is matching very much what was done at the level of UDRACT in some ways, because obviously you're in CTIS, in university, you were collecting that. Here, it's done very much within that section and member states, and you have the ability to do so. Okay, so should we take the next question?
Yes, so in which section should you upload the EU legal rep assignment letter if the sponsor is from US, for example? Okay, so we have to consider that with CTIS, the way of working and what some of the procedure in place with the directive and documents that were required might no longer be applicable with the regulation, and particularly for the legal rep in CTIS, the only details that are needed are basically, because the legal rep needs to be a natural person, are the name, the surname, and the organization details. So there is not a placeholder, and as such is not required to be submitted in CTIS to provide a document defining the details of the legal representative. Is not provided as a document uploaded. If the sponsor is based outside of the European Union, then according to the regulation, there should be a legal representative. And in that case, as a sponsor, you will have to provide the details of this legal representative with the name and surname and contact details and the organization for which this legal representative works. But there is no a need or a request to have an assignment letter. So these are the functionalities that are currently implemented to flag that there is a legal representative and to give you the possibility to meet the requirements of the regulation in that regard.
So the next question we see on the screen is the one just below. So if Roxana, if you just maybe highlight it. It is to do with, so when uploading redacted and anonymized documents for publication in part 2, informed consent, is it acceptable to upload the translated version not for publication and the English version for publication? Or do translated, redacted and anonymized documents needs to be uploaded too? So I think I would probably say what's important in part 2 is to submit to the member state the information that will be provided to the subject, to the patients, to the participants. So if the sponsor is doing a trial in a particular member state, then if in that particular member state the language, the information needs to be submitted in the language where it will be provided to the participants. So translation are only required if indeed participants will also be recruited in that particular language. I think that needs to be quite clear. That's the way the clinical trial regulation is, the expectation of the clinical trial regulation. I think that was the request of that question. And unless, I don't know, Laura, if you want to add to that, Laura, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Noemi. Just to expand on the concept, really, where we have two versions of the document for publication and not for publication in the system. Please keep in mind that we really have a version not for publication, not so much for translation or other purposes, is just in case you need to protect personal data and in case you need to protect CCI. So to have a version not for publication for any document for which this feature is implemented gives you the possibility to share with the member states information elements of CCI or personal data that might be needed. Personal data really be kept to the minimum. Now, according to the requirements of Article 81.4, CCI and personal data are not to be published, and therefore you should redact or anonymize the information in the slot for publication. So rather than think about more a translation in English or not, please keep the focus on the purpose of the elements of the version for publication, just in case you need to protect personal data, and not always the two versions of the document will be needed. Really depends on the content. And maybe in that respect, you can also consult the EMA guidance that has been recently published and is open for public consultation now for 5 months, in case you would like to provide comments on the principles describing this document to protect CCI and personal data. So Noemi, just to complement on this aspect. Thank you very much. I think the next one is mine, right? On the unexpected event. Okay, so what if an unexpected event occurs in several countries? Do we have to select all individual countries, even if it's 10, 20 or 30 countries have to be selected? Yes, the answer is yes. Basically, but the good news is that you can submit one notification only, selecting all the applicable member states concerned. So when you submit a notification, like an unexpected event, you will have the list of member states concerned for the trial. And then you can, with a simple tick, select the number of the individual countries that are affected by the occurrence of the unexpected events, and this can be one or many, but then you will just complete one form. So it's not like you have to complete the same form 20 times or 30 times. Is really more on the selection of the member states that should be notified, and then you complete the form, and the member states concerned will receive the notification. So this really depends on the nature of the unexpected events, but in the system you can easily do one or many. It's just a matter of tick and then completing one form. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. If I can interject here regarding the document weight, we have another question regarding that. So let me just highlight it, and you, Noemi or Laura, can pick it up.
Okay, so yes, I could, I'll take this one. Thank you very much, Roxana. So here it's a question about the annual safety report, which currently has a limited size of 10 megabytes. And it's to do with the previous issue that was raised. Can MAH decide not to submit the ASR through CTIS due to technical issues? Most of our ASR, as well as IV, do exceed 50 megabyte size. Okay. So first of all, let's be clear that it's not the MAH, it's the responsibility of the sponsor of the trial to upload to the system, to CTIS, the annual safety reports. Now, it is very true that because we've got 10 megabyte size, if an ASR is exceeding that size, it is currently, the workaround is to submit several documents. Now, several documents doesn't mean that you could certainly submit to the system 10 reports that are 10 megabytes each. So you certainly exceed 50 megabytes. It's absolutely possible. The 50 megabyte size is the target requirement that we want to reach for one single document. However, you can certainly submit more than 5 documents that are each 10 megabytes, if that makes it more clear. Okay.
Thank you, Noemi. The next one is on the CVs of the sub investigator, if they have to be submitted. Okay, that's quite an easy one, because in the system and according to the regulation, we only are required to submit a curriculum vitae of the principal investigators. So in CTIS, when the sponsor provides the details of the clinical investigator sites, there is a structured data to capture the name and the surname and the contact details of the PI, of the principal investigator, and a placeholder for the curriculum for the principal investigator. Sub-investigator CVs do not have to be submitted in CTIS.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. So the next question is to do with temporary halt. So when the study is temporary halted, we can currently submit, and the sponsor can currently submit and should submit to the member state concerned the notification, and it is currently in the system functionalities. So the expected behavior is for the sponsor to use that functionality to submit a temporary halt. This temporary halt can be due to benefit risk or may not, and therefore the sponsor would need to provide that information within the form that is currently available in the system.
Okay, thank you, Noemi. Next one is about RFIs. Are RFIs able to be sent at any time during the validation and the assessment period of an application? So if the member states can send an RFI at any time, yes. The answer basically is yes until the day before the due date for the assessment of the task. So for validation there are 10 days. For the assessment for part 1 and part 2 there are 45 days. And as soon the RMS basically is selected during the validation period, then an RFI can be sent. But the sponsors, they need to have at least 1 day. So they can be sent at any time during the validation phase and during the assessment of part 1 and part 2, but provided that the sponsors have at least 1 working day to reply. I think there are some discussions maybe also with the member states and an expectation that in principle only 1 RFI will be raised and to have an harmonized approach. But of course this will also go with experience and the use of the system, and we understand that some clarification will also be provided on the expectation on the number of RFIs and how they will be raised by the member states. But remember that at least we need to have 1 day for the sponsor to reply. So thank you.
So the next question is about the roadmap of CTIS. Will there be a document uploaded to the CTIS homepage indicating a planning on which updates to the system are planned? So I think on this particular question, I don't think I can answer whether and when we would publish such roadmap. But I'm aware that within the various meetings that we hold with stakeholders, we certainly provide information on what is planned in the future. So this is something that will come internally within our stakeholders meeting. Now, will any information be published? I don't think I can answer that, but I think we can certainly take that point internally and further reflect on whether this is needed to publish onto our CTIS homepage.
Okay, and the next one is maybe more for the member states on how to, on the expectation on how to deal with the RFI. So the question is, when there are 2 considerations in a single RFI asking for 2 different updates in the same document, how should the sponsor proceed as only 1 version of the updated document is permitted per RFI? I'm not sure I understood correctly the content. Maybe Noemi, you can help us also to complement, but I understand that, okay, if you have an RFI and you are requested to apply changes of different nature in the same document, you can just apply the modification and upload that version of the document under 1 RFI and clarifying the other RFI that the changes have been done as part of responding to that RFI. I'm not clear if the 2 considerations are in 2 different RFIs or in the same RFIs, but the important thing is maybe also to come back to the national competent authorities and requires some further clarification. I don't know, Noemi, if you have a better view on this one.
No, I think, Laura, I think the way you answered it is fine. I would support your answer, absolutely. If we're looking at 1 RFI here, if it's 1 single RFI and 2 considerations, then the sponsor just needs to proceed to those 2 updates within the same document and upload it to the dossier as an update. I think that's fine, no? Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll take the next one, Laura, yeah?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so the next question that we see on the screen is the CTIS annual safety report submission. Data entry cannot be saved. Okay, that's true. Will this be changed to be able to save the ASR submission data entry prior to submitting? It would be helpful to be able to save for QC purposes. Okay, so I think we take the point. We can certainly consider this as an improvement for the future. However, I must say today it's not thought to be because what was seen is that it's one single submission of a document with a few fields to be provided. But we take the point, and I think this is something that if we do have quite a lot of requests, we will certainly consider this as an improvement for the future. Thank you.
Okay, another one, we have some with, okay, 3 thumb ups. Is there an EMA definition? I don't think we have an EMA definition on recruitment start date, or is this to be determined at the sponsor? Yes, I think we should refer to the definitions provided in Article 2 of the regulation, and if it's first patient, first visit, or how is defined basically by the sponsor in the protocol. There is no specific EMA definition on recruitment start date, but you might find actually some more details on the interpretation of the requirements of the regulation in the Commission Q&A. Published in UDRALEX. In UDRALEX Volume 10, there is a Commission Q&A addressing different points also in the interpretation of the legal text, and further clarity can be found there on different aspects. I think for this one is referring to first patient, first visit, or how presented basically in the protocol. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you very much, Laura. So the next question is again also about the annual safety report. So it reads, how much information will be provided in the annual safety report submission form in general? So as an example, during the reporting period, ASR includes, as this is mandatory fields, at least one item needs to be selected, or are they planning to select all applicable items? I think in particular for this, I think there is an example there given on this field. I think we do have an improvement thought to be made in the future on this particular item, I must say. So when in this question, you're asking for how much information to be provided. I think what needs to be thought is that the form is there to support really some data entry in order to further be able to prepare some reports, statistical reports, etc. So when we think of how much information, you have the ability to provide an annual safety report. You can put quite a lot of information within this annual safety report that will be the subject of the assessment. The field here are there to guide, but it's not needed to put so much detail in those fields. Clearly, there are some guidance on this within the screen, but what I would say is that it doesn't really matter if you don't tick all the fields. If you select at least one, it should be at least sufficient. So the next topic, yes, thank you, Laura.
Yes, Noemi. So I saved a draft of a substantial modification in the sandbox and was not able to find it. Where can we find the saved draft? So that should not be the case, because every application that is still a draft, that is work in progress, maybe there was the only thing might have happened, there was a problem with saving the application maybe in the sandbox, so the sandbox would be like a test environment for the system. And by searching with the UCT number, basically then the user can see if everything, all the steps have been performed correctly, the initial application being submitted, and then all the lists of other applications that can be submitted or still in draft, and also the substantial modification with the status pending. So if the user is still working on the draft, then by searching for a UCT number, can see the whole history of applications being submitted or work in progress. So that's where you should be able to find it. Basically, from the trial number, you can search and access the from the summary page, the landing page. You can see all the list of applications, including the ones that are in draft. Maybe it's something went wrong with the saving functionality. Not sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. I'm interjecting again to say that these are the last 5 minutes in which our experts will reply to questions.
Okay, thanks very much, Roxana, to keep an eye on the time. So the next question we see on the screen is, can it be please be confirmed that the only patient-facing documents which are required to be submitted are the subject information sheet, information consent form. Other documents such as questionnaire, EPRO, etc., do not need to be submitted. Okay, so I think in order to respond to this question, what I would say is that the general view is to think that any documents that would be provided to the subject or to the participants needs to be assessed by the member states. Okay, now there are other documents that would be assessed by member states, and these are further clarified in the Q&A of the provided by the Commission. There are some documents that would not always be required. So I can't actually answer this question so strictly, and because it's not always black and white, but you should use the advice given to you or to us by the Commission. It should certainly support your way to operate and to know exactly what are the documents. And in doubt, please liaise with the member state in advance. Yeah.
Thank you, Noemi. The next one is about cover letters. So for which of the activities notifications do we expect separate cover letters, apart from the initial submission? So first of all, maybe let me clarify that the term notifications in CTIS is really specific for everything that pertains to informing the member states on start of trial, start of recruitment, end of trial, temporary halt, or unexpected events or serious breaches. Just to give you an example, the concept of cover letters pertains more to the applications. So we have initial application, we have substantial modifications for part 1, part 2, or both parts, for which a cover letter also should be provided. We have the addition of a member state's concern, for which cover letter should also be provided. And then there are non-SM. For the non-SM, we do not have a placeholder for cover letter. And the non-SM are basically the Article 81.9 modifications that are still relevant for the supervisions, but do not affect the benefit risk. For this, we do not have cover letters, but you can also modify the dossier. So for initial, for a substantial modification, for addition of a member state's concern, you also will have to provide cover letters, but not for the notifications. So maybe just to clarify on the terminology, because the notifications are more to inform the member states of occurrence of events on start of trial or serious breaches during the life cycle, basically. So I hope this clarifies the request for cover letters.
Thank you very much, Laura. So in the last few minutes, maybe one question more to take is the one just below, because I think it's quite important. Can we submit only part 1 documents initially and then submit the part 2 docs later on? It is possible today. It is definitely possible. However, it's not so much encouraged by our member states. I think we would prefer at this point in time to have full application. The reason is that if you start doing this dichotomy between part 1 and part 2, you will not be able to submit any substantial modification to the Part 1, and you will need to wait for the decision by all member states. So this is the reason why it is not encouraged at this point in time. Now, if you think that you can submit the Part 2 very shortly after the Part 1 has been reported on by the member states, then please do so. Make sure that then you submit all the Part 2s, because then all the Part 2s can be assessed and a decision by all member states can be taken. So that's the way probably to respond to this question today. And on the survey that was closed at the end of March, EMA is currently looking at it, and we will shortly be able to further assess how we're actually taking on the access to the CTIS sandbox, because we know it's very important. Thank you. I think, colleagues, we've got only a few minutes, and we should probably do the closing remark, if that's okay, Roxana.
Yeah, thank you very much, Noemi, and thank you, Laura, for your contribution to this event. So thank you all for attending the CTIS walk-in clinic. The post-event survey will be opened shortly after the event, and you can share your satisfaction with the event. You can find it on the EMA event page under the post-event survey section. A recording and the presentation will be available on the EMA website following the event. Sign up for the newsletter for information on when the videos are available. Questions will be used as input to EMA training and support materials. We would also like to remind you of some next events hosted by EMA on CTIS. On 5th and 19th of May, we will host the next 2 sessions of the CTIS walk-in clinics. More details are available on the EMA events page. And also on the 28th of April is the next bite-sized talk on a request for information on the clinical trial application. We hope that you have enjoyed this CTIS walk-in clinic, and we look forward to hearing your feedback in the post-event survey. Thank you and have a lovely day.